Hi, Michelle Glass here. Welcome back to our last episode in our Chapter 13, Lecture 13 series. And our topic here is the discussion of reflexes. Now, reflexes are important rapid automatic responses to specific stimuli. So we'll see that these are quick ways for the nervous system to control and protect the body. And typically these are responses that are happening, without conscious thought. So you're happening, the response is so quick that you're not able to really think about it until after you have in some way reacted. So a reflex arc at its most simplistic includes a sensory neuron and a motor neuron. And we will see that the stimulus has to be detected either by a receptor cell or by that sensory neuron itself. The sensory neuron then is synapsing directly onto the motor neuron, which is then directly synapsing onto the effector tissue. This here would be an example of a monosynaptic reflex, meaning a single synapse, and that synapse is there between the sensory and the motor neuron. Now, if you had a receptor cell, then that's going to put more in the chain here. But again, it would still be considered monosynaptic because the only synapse would be between the sensory neuron and the motor neuron. So you can see here that this processing in this example is happening at the spinal cord, and so this is really fast. No conscious thought is required in order to react. Now, reflexes are going to be categorized based on several different factors, and they're going to fit into multiple categories. So you can categorize a reflex as either being innate or acquired. An innate reflex is one that's genetically determined. You can think of it as being hardwired, is present at birth. So for instance, when your physician is knocking on your patellar tendon that's anchoring your patella to your tibia and your leg jerks out, that would be an example of an innate reflex. Acquired reflexes are learned reflexes. And so this could be, something that you're learning by intention. So maybe as part of an athletic practice, you learn at what point to swing your bat, and you can do that automatically. The ball's coming at you and you just swing the bat without a lot of thought, right? Or this might be you hear a loud noise and you've maybe been in a war zone for a period of time, and so you respond by taking cover, okay? Reflexes can also be categorized based on the type of effector tissue. So you can have somatic reflexes. So this means reflexes that are happening in the body. So there you should think of the effector as skeletal muscle. So this would be movements of the body itself, whereas visceral reflexes are those that are taking place unconsciously, regulated strictly by the autonomic nervous system. So this might be, you do get to make the conscious decision of swallowing food into the pharynx, but at that point, then the esophagus has some automatic reflex to get that material moved on into the stomach, and that's no longer consciously controlled. So that would be an example of a visceral reflex, or movement of material from the stomach to small intestine to large intestine, and so forth. Reflexes can also be categorized based on the number of synapses. So I introduced the idea of a reflex arc to you with the monosynaptic reflex example. That's again where you have just a single synapse that's between a sensory and a motor neuron. This is the fastest type of response that you can have. Polysynaptic responses require, 2 or more synapses in order for that reflex to occur. So obviously, as you're adding in more synapses, you're increasing the speed and also the level of response. So it can be a more complicated sort of response here. In this example that I've given you for a polysynaptic response, you can see your orange sensory neuron synapsing onto an interneuron, so there's your first synapse, and then the interneuron synapsing onto the motor neuron, so that is your second synapse. Notice too that our interneuron then can take that information on up to the brain for some conscious level processing, which is going to be a little bit slower. You've already responded, but you're consciously aware of that response. Reflexes can also be categorized based on the processing center. So if that is processed at the spinal cord, like the example I gave you at the beginning, then that's a spinal reflex. If instead the processing is happening at the brain stem, then that would be a cranial reflex. It's not called a brain reflex, it's called a cranial reflex, but the processing center then would be the brain. And then reflexes can also be categorized based on whether they involve just one side of the body, meaning I put my right hand on a hot stove and I jerk my right hand off of that hot stove, right? Versus that would be ipsilateral, so same side stimulus, same side response. A contralateral response or reflex is one that's across the body. So with my left foot, I step on a tack, and so I need to coordinate picking my left foot up off of the tack and sticking my right foot down on the ground. So by switching feet, then I have to talk to them both sides of my body. That would be the contralateral. So maybe you can use the letter C, contralateral, cross body, to help you remember the difference there. Okay, and that's it for now.